Welcome back to Talk Louisville. I'm Mike Mulready.
I'm Kelly Duckworth.
I was going to ask you how your weekend was, but this is our second one for the week. So.
I know. We have another one this week.
Did you say you won money at the Derby?
I did. I won not at the Derby. I don't have that kind of money to go, but.
Yeah, it was ridiculously expensive.
I know, but I did win $100. So.
I'm not going to trash Churchill. I think they're a great organization, but the prices have gotten a little out of hand.
Mm-hmm.
I mean.
Well, when you could go to the infield for what? $2 back in your day. Now it's $140.
I wasn't born back when Secretariat ran in 73, so I was born in 73, but I wasn't born back in 151 years like you think I was.
It's a long time.
She's half my age, so it's they get that crap all the time. We got a wonderful special guest today, Miss Christine Miller. How you doing?
I'm fabulous, y'all.
Yeah, wonderful. I love that y'all from the South, obviously.
Yes, Bullitt County. I'm South Bullitt County.
There you go. That's hilarious. I love that accent. I used to do a lot of work with people in New York, and they would get me on the phone, just try to get me to say certain things. They thought it was hilarious.
Well, I went to law school in Boston, so you should have seen how that went with us.
I bet, yeah.
We could not communicate for the first 6 months. I went to the hardware store, and he was like, I don't know what you're saying.
What did you say?
And I was like, I don't know what you're saying.
Really?
And I called my Nana. I'm like, what have I done? But no, it was great. I loved Boston.
And we used to joke when we go to Kings Island back when I was younger. I noticed when people found out we were from Kentucky, they would look at our feet. And I was like, what are you doing? And I was like, well, you're Kentucky. Y'all don't wear shoes. We were just seeing if you had shoes on.
I do.
The stereotypes.
I know. Isn't it crazy?
I love being barefoot.
Well, I don't really like shoes, so I guess that is perfect for me. But I do wear shoes, and I'm not an animal. I do wear shoes, clothes, stuff like that. So.
Well, I think Louisville's a little different. When I left Boston, I got placed in Eastern Kentucky, and I'd never really been east of Lexington. Mm-hmm. So I just bounced around. I was like, whoa, maybe some of the stereotypes are a little accurate, you know? But no, Eastern Kentucky, the people are great.
Well, usually I don't pick up accents. When you saw y'all like that, it hit me.
Well, I'm surprised you didn't pick up a Boston accent.
Every once in a while, I say wicked.
Oh.
You know, and then I haven't been there in a decade. So if I talk to my good girlfriend, Jen, I'll be like, da-da-da-da. I get back into it. You know?
What's another one? Use guys or you guys or something like that?
I think they say that.
Use guys?
Yeah.
It's like use guys, not you guys.
And that might be more New York.
New York,
talk, you caught in the Harvard Yard, or something like that. You know, I could never say it right.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, they would make fun of me saying wash because it's wash or something. Or I say wash and it's supposed to be wash. Apparently, I'm getting it wrong.
Yeah, I grew up in Mount Washington. It's actually Washington. Wait, I don't know.
I'm not real sure. When you think about it, you kind of forget.
I don't know either.
Oops.
So you caught our attention. You caught a friend of mine's attention because she knows that I'm so sick and tired of the Crown in Louisville. Actually across the country. And she shared a TikTok with me that you're doing. Is this something you just started doing where you're covering court cases and things like that?
Well, I'm an attorney by trade, and I left practicing about 2 or 3 years ago. I ran for judge, and I just had the notion that what's happening in Louisville is a hot mess. But essentially, we had a family court judge here that spent a lot of her time trying to be a social media influencer. She did TikTok makeup. She would dance on the bench, just super inappropriate things.
How did she use the bench and put makeup on while she said, can you just walk into the courtroom at any time, or is it?
In fairness to her, she was doing makeup at home, now still during work hours, but she would endorse brands. But she's dancing on the bench, getting hype for her domestic violence docket. But in February of last year, she selfie recorded a domestic violence hearing, like from her perspective. And the parties, it's clear they don't know they're being recorded.
Oh, my gosh.
Right? And she posted this on TikTok. It was after Super Bowl.
She is judge still?
She is still a judge. Right? The TikTok judge, I referred to her. And I remember being like, surely this is enough bad behavior. The other judges are going to be like, no, ma'am, you can't do this. And they weren't. And so I figured if she could do it, because she's not the brightest crown in the coloring box, I could figure it out. And it's just taken off because people are tired of the judiciary.
Yeah, it's sad.
Yeah.
And you ran for judge. How did that go? Was it kind of a cutthroat thing, or?
It's just you realize that the world is set up to get the people that have money and have connections more power. I mean, it was just blatantly obvious. And I'm a person that had a very successful career, but I decided to leave family court because of this TikTok judge and because family court is just a mess in and of itself. And I couldn't be a part of the system. So I wanted to go to circuit. I was a public defender for many years, and I love that type of work. I love criminal law. But you realize quickly that it's all about who you know and not, I know a lot of people. You know a lot of people in Louisville, but I'm talking about who you know that come from money,
But how does that influence the judge stuff? So you're saying they're helping influence, because I know on the other politics side that's usually a factor. Money seems to always win, whether it's good or bad. So how does that, when you say that, what's that look like as far as money influencing judicial decisions? Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think it's the endorsements matter. So, like Seafair is a very, very powerful entity. The unions are very powerful. And for example, I have driven a Ford my entire life. Well, with the exception of a few years, but the judge I was running against got a DUI at 7 a.m. in a Mercedes and got the Ford endorsement. My grandfather worked at Ford. My father was the president of his union, and it was just astonishing that that's how the system works.
Wow.
I don't even know what to say about that.
But it's just, when you say this stuff out loud, people are shocked. But the primary problem we have here in Louisville is that the media does not report on the judges unless it is a positive puff piece.
Yeah, because when I go vote, you get to the judge section, and I have no idea who these people are, what they've done. We've wanted to try and educate people on which judges are truly holding people accountable. And you and I had that talk. It's not about keep people accountable. It's about what?
Working full time.
And having them do their jobs.
Yes, they need to work full time and do their jobs, follow the law. We have 16 district court judges. Right now, they probably have 6 courtrooms open today. 16 judges, 6 courts. That's over 6 figures a year. Then we have 10 family court judges. They are not working full time. Like, we have them doing TikToks in the back, all of these things.
I would have never expected a judge to do that. That blows me away.
It's shocking. And that's just one example that is so public. But one of the cases I covered recently was the case where Judge Ogden had ordered a dad that had sole custody to hand the baby back over to mom in open court after they had a hearing that had been canceled, and dad never testified. And that just went ablaze online, because when you see it with your own eyes, it changes the way you think about it.
Well, what I was going to say about the judges is when you go in to vote, you don't know who they are. You know nothing about them. All you vote usually, and I would say most people do this because you can't keep up with the judges, because I guess they don't have the money to run all the commercials that all the other politicians do. But the judge isn't really a politician, is it? They're appointed, elected. I guess they are a politician.
Okay. Oh, they're absolutely.
But my point is, people typically, and I've asked people this, who do you vote for with judge? Well, I saw this sign on the side of the road when I rolled in, and that's the last one I saw, so that's the one I checked. So these judges often are being elected not by what they've done. It's about the last sign somebody saw when they pulled in the parking lot to go vote.
Additionally, Louisville has a real problem, and I don't mean any disrespect to that. Obviously, I'm a female, but we vote for females, and it's become a problem. And there are female lawyers that know if they enter a race against a male that they will win. Of the 16 district court judges, 15 females.
Oh my gosh.
I'm tired of voting for people just because of that.
Absolutely.
When are we going to get back to voting for the people that can do the job? Not, we need more women in here. We do, but we need more women and more whatever because they're qualified, not because of a checkbox we're trying to fix.
Because they're qualified and because of their work ethic. Now, this is not to say that automatically the men that are on the bench.
Oh, for sure. I get that.
But that being said, we shouldn't vote for people just because of their skin color, just because of their gender, just because of their sexual identity, et cetera, et cetera. Again, really one of the fundamental problems that would fix a lot of the problems in Louisville would just be if these judges were held accountable and worked full time.
Well, you say that, and I haven't spent a whole lot of time like in a courtroom, but probably the handful of times that I've been in there, I remember walking in, we had like a 9 a.m. court case or something, and they said, oh, the judge isn't coming today. He's moving his daughter into college. And we were like, what? This was like 4 months ago or whatever it was for the spring semester. But I'm like, how can you just not show up or let anybody know we've already, taken off work and got down here, and then he just didn't show up?
Does that happen quite a bit?
If a docket, it says it starts at 9, you'd be lucky for a judge to be on that bench by 9:30.
Why is that? They just do whatever they, when you see a judge, I'm not religious, but I'm thinking, it reminds me like the Pope. You see him there with a nice robe on, you think sophisticated and smart, and somebody's really here for the law. It's not that way.
Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And they have a part-time gig for the most
Do
part.
they work other jobs? When you say part-time, they don't.
Well, the TikTok judge, allegedly had a side hustle of like getting products and endorsing products. So that's a profit industry. But no, they make a good living, but they're just able to continually campaign. They're going to events in order for there to be pictures on social media, which in and of itself, I think is a problem. They're also out in the community in a way that I believe creates more conflicts of interest. Them going to like the big fancy law firms and having fundraisers where they're donating.
Right.
If you go into court and you can't afford that big fancy law firm, you feel a certain kind of way, as you should.
Do they get more money or something if they keep rescheduling you and keep making attorneys and everybody show up?
No, they have a salary, but the attorneys sometimes can make more money, but they don't think about people other than themselves.
Right.
There is a true lack of empathy. Aside from the fact that court doesn't start at time, the way in which judges speak to litigants and attorneys would shock you if you saw it in real
Like
time.
in a bad way or
Condescending, negative, yell. I've seen attorneys. I had a family court judge once that stormed off the bench and kind of threw something. Like she was just so frustrated. And it was so shocking to me. She's no longer on the bench. But also as a woman, which I'm sure when women throw temper tantrums, it's insulting to all of us in a professional capacity. I'm not saying I've not ever crashed out once or twice.
Judge Judy's a little
not at work.
No.
Right.
Yeah, I know. I totally get it. But like I said, you see judges up there and you think they're like holier than thou as far as the law. And that's just really discerning to hear that.
We're getting a lot of cases lately where the Court of Appeals is overturning for abuse of discretion because I think the pendulum has swung entirely too far in one direction. District court, you've got a huge problem of judges not working. I know that you're a big proponent of just lock them up. I'm a prior public defender, which I have a different mentality. Obviously, the constitutional protections, but these judges aren't running NCICs, which is like out of court. Not out of court. Other state. Like to see if they have warrants in other states.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm an opponent. I believe jail isn't good for everybody. I think we can rehab people, but the problem is there's no place to send people that need rehab in most cases. There's very few places that I'm aware of. You talk about kids that get locked up. Well, there's no juvenile system anymore. So where do you send kids to steal cars? A friend of mine has a car lot, and he had a couple of years ago about 8 cars stolen. They found out off the videos it was like 12 and 13-year-old kids that were stealing the cars. There's no place to send those kids, so they just turn them loose. I'm for military school. If you get some kids that are causing trouble, send them someplace for 6 months where they got to get up at 5 a.m. with a sergeant of arms in their face, doing calisthenics and teaching some discipline. But there's no place to send, unless I'm wrong. Is there any place to send some of these people?
Well, I think juveniles, we definitely need rehabilitation. And you're 100% right. What are we supposed to do when they just let someone out and they go and commit crimes again, especially when they're 12, 13, 14, 15? We have to look at the bigger problem, which why are kids doing this?
Yeah.
And the reality is COVID is to blame for a lot of the problems in court and the schools. We isolated children. We left them in communities with little hope, no access to food, no access to discipline, and then they were recruited to commit these crimes. But it is tragic, and I do think we have a shout out to Anthony Jones. We have a phenomenal juvenile judge right now, and he really is. He's a former prosecutor. He's one of the few that I'll speak kindly on, and I think he is doing a good job. But I think we need significant more rehabilitation for juveniles.
We definitely do.
Kids deserve better.
Yeah, we were talking before we went on the air about a couple of videos that I shared. There was somebody going around a Walgreens, just picking stuff up. And it's happened twice over the past couple of weeks that videos are shared. I know it happens every day, but the theft is god-awful. It's ridiculous. It's causing prices to go up. But nobody's holding anybody accountable. Our games got hit a couple times. And the cops say, yeah, we can go arrest them, but they're going to be out tomorrow anyway. So what's the use of even trying to take somebody off the streets? Is that kind of common mentality? Or because if you talk to officers, a lot of times they arrest the same people 2, 3, 4 times a week. They know most of them by name.
Which is terrible.
Why are they back out on the streets?
Yeah, we had massive bond movement when I was a public defender, which I was super supportive of at the time, but I still think that the judges are just predominantly getting it wrong. And I will say, like the Walgreens thing where you see these sort of thefts where people just know they're not going to get any trouble. I mean, it turns your stomach. And that's something we have to realize we went way too far by just releasing on your own recognizance for every single theft charge, because there's a difference. You should look at someone's record. And if they're going to get out and commit again, honestly, that just makes the incarceration longer, which is also detrimental to the system. But again, I think we don't have we have judges that just don't care.
Right. Or their
Yeah.
bail is, if you have a drug offender or a drug addict or a murderer, sometimes the murderer's bond is less than the drug addict's. And you're like, well, how does that make any sense? You literally killed somebody, but you can get out for $5,000 or whatever it is.
Allegedly. And that's why we still have the presumption of innocence. And I do think there is something to be said. Dan Cannon is, he teaches here at U of L, and people that don't make bond for like serious charges are much more likely to plea because you may have 18 months in. And so you may go to the board immediately. So it's a difficult standard. But now I doubt that if you look at the actual data, the recidivism rate for murder is much lower than it is for theft, because theft is typically driven by substance abuse issues.
Right.
Yeah, I get, there. You hear people say we need to get to no bond, but what good is that? And I get the reason why, because rich white collar crime people, they can post bail and they can get out. But sometimes the crimes just don't match when they let people out on bail or bond, whatever. Is it bail, bond? Is that the same thing?
I mean, no, but essentially for the purposes of this conversation.
Yeah.
But I think the violence in the crime, like we're seeing the carjackings, like that is terrifying. And those are the kind of things where we need to be really considerate of the trauma that will lead to everyone involved. And also, if you're willing to use violence to get something, that increases the use of violence for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like that puts you in a dangerous, if someone's going to hurt her, you're going to get in a fight, which could hurt you. And I think that's where the big determination is, as far as we need to look at the violence inherent in the crime that was allegedly committed.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm on an episode of Law and Order right now.
I know. We both know of a young lady that was killed a few years ago, and the person that did it hit her head on in a car. It was in a stolen car. The guy had a rap sheet a mile long, should have never been out of jail, but this whole bail bond project thing bailed him out, and he killed this little girl, hit her head on the highway. He should have never been out of jail.
Well, see, and that's different where we have these nonprofits that are actually posting the bond.
Yeah.
People. That's very different. And it's the pendulum swung too far one way, but I do think we've overcorrected, and we're seeing the consequences of that now. The sad thing is we've seen this play before, like the crack epidemic in the 80s. We know what happens if we just mass incarcerate everyone. We'll have more deaths at the Louisville Metro Jail, and then we'll have families that don't have fathers or mothers. But the answer is not one way automatically or the other way automatically.
Mm-hmm.
We have such a visceral reaction to this kind of stuff that we're like, enough, everyone goes away. Or enough, we've locked up too many innocent people, everybody gets out.
Yeah, I can see both sides of that, but again, just like the juvenile system, there's very few places to send people that have done horrible drugs. I could care less about weed. That's more like alcohol as far as I'm concerned. Anybody that has minor marijuana charges, I think should be released. They're not hurting anybody. I've never met a violent pothead.
No, they're just cool, calm, and collected.
No, most of them are relaxed, chilled out.
The fact that we're even still incarcerating people for marijuana is insane.
Yeah,
if they're not testing it, a drug test for a job anymore, if marijuana isn't on there, then why are we still arresting people for it?
They say that just for simple possession, they're not. But if people have bench warrants, I've heard that they're still being picked up on that. And then people are like, well, you need to be accountable for not showing up to court. And it's like, but it's just going to cost money, and they'll miss work, and then they get arrested, their car's impounded, and it just trickles down, for someone that's got low income, it can be a devastating event.
Yeah, for sure. So what's a couple cases you've talked about recently that we can look at and kind of get a picture of some of the things you're talking about where judges just aren't doing their jobs?
Well, I think that we look at the fact, like the case where the baby was handed over. I mean, that was a clear abuse of discretion. The Court of Appeals issued extraordinary relief in the form of an emergency order and a writ of prohibition, which essentially is like, whoa, judge, no, you can't do that. I think one thing that you, being a member of the public, that would just change your perception of the judiciary is just ask them to live stream court. I mean, how much would you love to just watch court all day?
Oh, yeah.
You know, I think a lot of these judges want to be Judge Judy. They think they're going to be famous and they're given these little quippy, you know, things. And that's not how the court of law should be operated. Also, I posted recently, and this is the TikTok judge, you know, essentially just flipping through the file for 15 minutes, not knowing what's going on.
No, sounds like another government agency.
Yeah, here's an 1,800-page bill. You don't have to read it. We'll discuss what's in it later and just vote for it.
Blatantly said on TV, we didn't read it, but we're going to vote yes.
Yeah.
And Matt Bevin recently was involved in family court, and that was one place where the local media, for obvious reasons, you know, the local media is very skewed politically one way.
Yeah, they hated him from the beginning.
And that's just facts. And I'm not a fan, but I mean, the facts are he did something it's going to be reported on. But it was interesting because they wrote about how, oh my gosh, this happened. He did this. It's when he was representing himself and cross-examining the alleged victim, his son. And I'm like, y'all, that happens every day in family court. Go watch it and report on it.
Yeah, it just became a big story because he was the previous governor. And, you know, I've heard good things about him. I've heard bad. But then there's always two sides to every story. And I think that's what the judge is supposed to figure out. But who knows that the kid was probably a spoiled kid and just didn't get exactly what he wanted one day. So he got mad. But I don't know the case. I didn't even watch it. I just saw he was in court, and I know no details, but you just never know. The problem is when it makes social media, everybody already assumes you're guilty before you're even proven, you know? I mean, it's very difficult to get around that.
Well, and that's the thing. We all have our own bias and how we see things, and so do judges. And so in family court, when you don't have jury trials, that also becomes problematic because the judge may be skewed pro-mom, pro-dad, domestic violence happened. And what I mean by that is we have judges that are prior prosecutors for DV. And so certainly they're skewed in a certain way. I will say I did watch the Matt Bevin thing. There were some warning signs that were testified to, but the reality is family court is just in and of itself tragic. You know, no one ever called me and said, because they were having a good day, hey, Christine, I'm happy to be paying you X amount of dollars to have this conversation.
That would be rough.
Right? You know?
Are they just making the wrong decisions on these kids? Is that what you mean by, because, you know, sometimes, and this is no case, but say you got a person, and I've seen this before because my wife used to be a teacher. You got these parents that are drug addicts, or they're doing something they're not supposed to be doing. The kid gets taken away. They prove that they've done what they're supposed to do, 6 months, 8 months, whatever. And next thing you know, they're giving the kid back to the people. And then it's a cycle again. They do it again. You know, they went back to doing drugs again. Now they got to take the kid away from the home. I mean, it's a reciprocal process.
So many problems. There are so many problems and so many cyclical, like that's just the nature of life and substance abuse. These cases you're talking about are confidential, so we actually can't see in real time. But imagine that scenario where you lose your children because of substance abuse and the person that's making the decision about the child hasn't read the file. And it's coming out there, hearing from two lawyers, cranky, and then just snaps and makes a decision. And so that's what I mean by they're getting it wrong. And I have been very adamant that I do think family court judges are getting it wrong more often than they're getting it right. They're angry at the fact that they have to work. They're angry that they're there. They're angry that they can't
Why
force
even
a
do it
settlement.
then?
Yeah, that didn't make any sense. That's insane. But I guess human nature. I mean, we get up and go to our job. Some days we're on, some days we just don't want to go. But you would think in a position like that, they would want it for a specific reason, or do they just want to be a judge for the status of it? Is that what it is?
Just want to be a judge.
So they go to all the big parties and stuff like that?
And I don't even think the parties are fun.
Yeah, I'm a keg party kind of guy, not a gala, so I know what you mean by that.
Right. And it's a very small group of people in Louisville that are controlling all of this. And the reality is most of us don't want to hang out with them. But I think a lot of it, too, is like in family court, you just assume you impose your socioeconomic beliefs, which we all do. But, you know, why can't you guys just co-parent? And it's like, well, because mom is abusive or dad is crazy. And we need the court to come in and make a decision. And the court seems frustrated, like, just get along. And it's like, we can't get along. That's why we're in court. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So those things come across. And then it's almost like with a small child where if you yell at them, they'll just suddenly
Shut
listen,
down. Oh, yeah.
you know, which is not effective for adults. Does yelling make either of you want to just immediately comply?
No, sometimes you got to raise your voice. I'm bad about that.
Yeah.
See,
But it gets their attention sometimes, you know.
Oh, for kids,
sometimes
sure.
I'm asking you 10 more times. Please put it down. It doesn't. Sometimes you got to get a little aggravated to get their attention, but no, I'm not talking about abusive. But
like as for adults, like I don't think that when you go to court, the way how I practiced criminal law for so long, I never heard judges speak to litigants that were looking at significant jail time for horrific events, the way that some of these family court judges speak to litigants that are fighting about an hour of parenting time.
And you said some of them are recording these things.
Well, we know that the TikTok judge did selfie record while this was happening.
So they're going for likes on somebody else's behalf, somebody else's embarrassment, whether the person's guilty or not. I'm sure, I don't know, some people probably don't really bother with being embarrassed about what they did, but you know, it's on their shame, I guess you could say, that they're making money off videos.
Well, and it's
but again, they're not Judge Judy.
Exactly.
What was the male judge that was he always did like traffic tickets and stuff? He was big on social media and he'd always give people like a break.
Oh,
what is his name?
In Massachusetts.
He had the glasses and he was awesome.
But see, now that was the actual official court recording.
Right. It wasn't him recording.
Yeah, it wasn't him like, oh my gosh, you just hit your sister?
Yeah.
Holler, like hit play, which the case that she posted was adult siblings. And I've never released the full, she's since deleted it. I've never released the full one because it just feels wrong. You can tell that these parties don't know they're being recorded by her. Obviously, they're being recorded by the court, you know.
Oh my gosh.
But it's just not, it's radical.
But the TikTok judge, has anything been done as far as her using the bench and the robe as a way to get attention? Because, you know, we were talking
about your code of conduct that you cannot.
Well, yeah, but we were talking about earlier. I don't remember if it was a cop or a military person that was doing some risque stuff, like OnlyFans stuff in uniform. And they got in a lot of trouble for that because they were misrepresenting the uniform. To me, that's misrepresenting the uniform if you're doing that.
There's a plethora of ethical problems, in my opinion. But absolutely. And one of the fundamental problems with the judiciary is that it's self-policing and that we have the Judicial Conduct Commission. And all investigations are completely confidential. And the only way the public will ever know is if they have a public or private reprimand. And so certainly I felt an ethical obligation to file a complaint when I saw that. And all I can say is there was not any public or private reprimand that was posted on the website.
So judges don't have like a boss. They just have like a board or something above like a...
They have, the Judicial Conduct Commission is made up of different people. Some of them are other judges and then basically political appointments.
You said self-regulated policing, yeah.
And the confidentiality aspect of it.
So they stick together no matter what.
Oh, people think back the blue, back the bench. And that is the fundamental problem. Really, if the judges could have nipped all of this in the bud by holding each other accountable, just saying, whoa, whoa, whoa. You know, and that was one of my big reasons for being so vocal is because this TikTok judge too, they posted, you know, the judges just dancing like at a Christmas party and dancing when no one filed to run against them. And it's like, y'all have just lost your connection with reality, you know?
Yeah, you see, a friend of ours, they had to go into court and they called us later and they said, we won. I said, I didn't think you had a chance. Well, my attorney happened to hang out with the judge's wife, and I guess that's the reason why we won the case. I guess that happens as well.
It should not
have. I was going to say it's conflict of interest.
What should they do? Should they take a break and go back and read 3 or 4 cases that pertain to this particular case and make a ruling on that? Is that what a judge is supposed to do? Or do they?
At a minimum, they should be reviewing the file, know the facts before them, and then follow the law.
So a lot of times the first time they read it is when they sit down.
Yes. Oh, if they even read it then.
Wow.
How many cases do they have in a day?
It would depend on the day. Now, but you have to think, too, they have a massive staff. Like, the staff attorney for each judge is probably the most important person in the room, and they're the ones typically writing the orders. And they are typically reviewing the file. It's very low pay. It's not a job I would even ever consider. But they, on a motion hour, which is, and then they'll have DV, maybe 20 cases.
Oh, my God. So I would just say, all right, Mike, this is your case. This is what you got. Make a decision type of a thing.
If he was your staff attorney?
Yeah. Or
Can I say that I've seen that exactly happen? No. But do I believe that they say, I want to rule in favor of Christine, and then the staff attorney can get law to support that? I think that happens.
so they don't do any major work, really.
I have not seen a strong work ethic coming from the judiciary. Let me just say that, which is another reason why I'm not scared to be vocal about it. I was raised, don't be scared of lazy people.
Right.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, to me, it just kind of sounds like, and not to knock on doctors, but nurses do all the grunt work
Yeah.
and doctors get all. That's kind of what it sounds like. You know, the staff attorney does all the hard work and the judge just bangs the gavel.
And the attorneys. I mean, there are a lot of attorneys get a bad rap, and I understand why, you know, in some regards, but the attorneys also, they're doing a lot of the work and presenting to the judge what's happening. And I used to tell my clients all the time, like, listen, the judge has not reviewed the file, so you need to think of the two things you really want to get across in this hearing.
Right. And hope he catches it and listens.
Because you would expect, why are you filing for sole custody? Well, I said everything, all the reasons in my pleading. And the judge is like, well, why are you filing for sole custody? And then the pleading's like, because, you know, the kid missed 48 days of school and yada, 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 you know, hypothetical.
That's crazy.
I know.
I mean, I'm just baffled by this whole thing. So I know nothing about the judicial system other than I'm sick and tired of the crime in this city, in this state, in this country altogether. But do attorneys have access to the judges before the court? I mean, do they like meet and say, hey, we're coming up today. I just want to let you know this is going. Do they talk to them on the side before the actual court case? I have no idea how that works.
Yeah, it would depend. And I mean, if it was.
Are they allowed to?
Well, if it's done without the opposing counsel, absolutely not. That's
okay. So they both have to be there.
Yes. But oftentimes, and I don't necessarily think this is bad, like before a big trial, if you had a 2-hour hearing, the judge may call both attorneys into chambers and be like,
is that a sidebar?
Yeah. We'd be in the back though, and just be like, what's going on?
Right.
You know what I mean? Give me a little 5 minute, give me a little 5 minute. And there's something to be said about knowing where your judge is leaning because they have to follow the law. And I do think there are circumstances, you know, especially where you're talking about a first offense. That's where we have as far as releasing on a reasonable bond. If you have no record, you're much more likely to get ROR or a reasonable bond that you can afford, and that's statutory. That's just the law.
And I'm okay with that.
Yeah.
One first time, maybe you just really screwed up and you're probably not do it again. But it's these people that have 5, 10, 15, 20 things on their record, and they still out in society causing problems.
Absolutely. And the rate of domestic violence is only increasing. And we all know that law enforcement going to the scene of alleged DV is the most dangerous thing for them.
Alleged what?
DV.
Domestic violence.
Yeah.
You speak lawyer term. I try to ask questions. Throw some IT stuff at you in a minute. See if you know what those
know
are.
nothing.
Well, that's very intriguing. I tell you, everybody always wonders about the judicial system. And how does the county attorney come into things? Do they have the ultimate say? Is it the county attorney? Do they have the ultimate say over every case? Or if a judge does something differently, can it go to that person and they can overrule it? Or how does that work?
Well,
because it seems like our county attorney, and I know nothing about him other than he's to blame if there's a lot of crime in Louisville, I think. But I don't know if that's the case or not.
Our county attorney is very powerful politically. And now county attorneys are only going to handle the lower level cases. The Commonwealth attorney is going to handle felonies. And they do, I think our new Commonwealth attorney and he get along. Our county attorney, Michael Connell, is retiring. But I certainly think that they set a lot of the standards. And there'll be a lot of infighting amongst all of the political
Do we have a district attorney too?
It's essentially, we have a county attorney and a Commonwealth attorney.
Okay.
Yeah. We don't have a DA.
So one of these judges will probably move up to county attorney or something. Is that an elected position
It'll
as
be
well?
an elected position, yes. I'm optimistic that many people will run. I think we need to have a change in the old guard. I mean, I haven't decided who I'll endorse or any of that, at this point. But I think Louisville predominantly needs to just have some fresh meat in the judiciary and the county attorney and the Commonwealth attorney. Last names matter. We've got parents, people on the bench now that are judges, that their parents were judges. And, my parents are phenomenal people, but I'm a first generation attorney and I think it's a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a way to get a list of judges? And I'm not talking about libel them. I'm talking about this judge sent 5 people to rehab 15 people to jail and let 30 people go. This judge, I mean, is there a way to get a list of like that so we can start making it public? So when people start making these decisions, I don't want to give bad information. I just want to list their record, like wins and losses, you know?
Well, that's my point, is that we need accountability for these judges. And if the Courier Journal, Wave 3, WHAS would start to do their jobs and be the check and balance on a government entity, then you would start to get this information, because you don't have anything you don't have any place to go to get this information other than to listen to me on TikTok talk about some judges and what they're doing. And if the local media would get involved and just hold them to the same level they hold LMPD, you would have a much clearer view of what's happening.
So that can be open like records. Like
it's all open. Almost everything that happens in court, with the exception of that dependency, neglect, and abuse docket, is going to be open for public record. Like when I used to be a public defender out in Eastern Kentucky, we had a reporter come to court every motion hour and sit in the back and just jot down. Like it would be Christine Miller pled to trafficking 5 years. Mike pled to theft 2 years. And so it would be in the newspaper what each person got. We have nothing like that.
We need that. Who can put that together?
Journalists, that is the job of the independent free press, is to hold the government entities accountable.
Maybe we can talk Caden into picking that up as a side.
My daughter's, she went in for photojournalism. She's at WKU, and she's slowly wanting to get into political science and law. She told us the other day she reads Kentucky Supreme Court cases for fun. She loves it. So.
That's amazing. Yeah, tell her to be my little intern.
I was going to say, there you go.
My goal is to get a platform, and I've done some writing for some journalists out of California. Our local journalists do not seem to care at all. And the reason for that, in my opinion, is I think a lot of these judges are their local sources, and they can go do a fun puff piece about, hey, we'll follow the judge for the day and we have all of these clicks, but there's not any real accountability.
Well, the media, like them or not, they're going after monetization of the links and the clicks and the likes and things like that. And I had a reporter once tell me, if it bleeds, it leads. So, but to me, you would think they would want to go after that and stir up some controversy to get some links and likes and shares and things like that, because it would really stir it up if we could get a list, and they would make all kinds of money on the media side. I mean, because I know that's what they're there for. They don't tell the news anymore. They do it for social media presence.
Yes. And I'm a little bit on the more jaded side where this would make them money.
I think so too, but maybe they just they're not thinking it through. I don't know. I think it would make them a ton of money, but for some reason they're not putting it out there.
And I've tried to speak with them. Please report on this. People care about this. And they just don't see. They seem to get pushback from the higher ups. I mean, I sat down with Wave 3 with one of my former clients, Mr. Henry, and I report on this. This case is horrific. And I was his attorney at the time, if you have time for this story. I picked up his case during COVID, so I had never met him in person, and the attorney he previously had left the practice, and he was emphatic that the mother of his child was dangerous. I mean, to the point that I almost thought he was crazy. It was just like, okay. And I was sitting at my kitchen table, and look, I've got cold chills, and I got a phone call, and the mom's boyfriend had shot the child. And the mom did not seek medical treatment for what I believe 15 hours. She pled guilty to a diversion, which is a whole nother topic, for wanton endangerment and intimidating a witness in a legal proceeding. Now, we got his daughter back at the time, but subsequently, mom has got the daughter back.
Who in their right mind would give that baby back?
Exactly. And we sat down with Wave 3 on a Saturday, did an interview. And even with my notion of being like, I understand the higher ups aren't interested in really telling the story like I just told it. Let's tell it from a lighter perspective. Let's tell it from a pro Father's Day. We did the recording. The next day we get a text message. We're going to go in a different direction, or something along those lines, or we want more information.
What was that lady that killed all her kids? She drowned them all, like 7 kids. Remember that? It wasn't here in Louisville.
Was that Louisville?
No, it wasn't. But wasn't she, for some reason, I remember she wasn't supposed to be with those kids by herself, but some judge ruled to allow the kids to be there. I don't know. I have to look it up. The point is, she should have never been alone with the kids. She drowned all 6 or 7 of her kids.
Oh, my gosh.
And she wasn't even supposed to be by herself with them. But I'm thinking it was I'll probably get it wrong, but I'm thinking it was some sort of legal thing that says she cannot be left alone. She was left alone and she murdered all 6 or 7 of her kids. At what point are we in society we're going to say, look, we got to stop doing this?
Right. And that's what it will take for the local media to care. If they get something like that, they would write about it. But I think the day-to-day requires work. And also, I am not blind to the fact that I am able to use my legal training to be persuasive. And a lot of these judicial orders will read in a way that maybe you can understand when you're reading the order how they came to that conclusion. But when you actually look at the facts from a reasonable person or just a common sense perspective, you're like, what are you doing?
I think we're past common sense in this world. There is no common sense in this world. You can look at something black and white and think this makes all the sense in the world, and somebody's going to say, nope, we're doing this. I'm like, who decided that?
Mm-hmm.
But there's got to be more checks and balances. I mean, our government was set up that way, but it seems like we're missing something.
100%. The lack of transparency in the judiciary is astonishing, the lack of accountability. And if they want to shut me down tomorrow, all they have to do is live stream court. No one cares what I have to say. Maybe a select few people, but they want to know what's happening in their court system.
But that's similar to officers having to wear body cameras.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. I think we need to put body cameras on teachers too, so they can see how these kids act in schools.
Well, if you see what actually happens with your own eyes,
you can't deny it.
You can make a determination.
No.
I completely agree. I think, certainly if you live stream something, the judge would have chambers, but when they came out into court, they already know they're being recorded, but let's watch court.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'll see how stressful a job is to make a decision, or what the prosecutors are arguing, or what the defense attorney's arguing. But yes, I'm a huge proponent of that.
I thought it was. I'm surprised it's not in today's world. Because during COVID, you had to do everything online. Did you not? I mean, they were doing court via Zoom and everything else. Are those not recorded? I guess they're just not streamed live so people can't watch them.
They're recorded, but then each individual...
They don't upload them. You don't know where to go get them.
I can go get them, but each individual case is going to be $25 a pop.
Ouch.
So it's just the lack of the accessibility of something like that.
Is that a Kentucky thing or just national? They don't live stream any court cases.
Well, if you look at the lack of cameras in courtrooms is a fundamental problem. Have you ever seen a Supreme Court argument? Do you know?
No.
Of course, you haven't. I haven't. You haven't.
Judge Judy not a Supreme Court justice?
LOL. But
what's that other guy's name? He makes me laugh too. Anyway, I think so. Yeah.
There aren't cameras in the Supreme Court, which is insane. A lot of jurisdictions throughout this country don't have cameras; they just have transcripts.
I wonder why. They're worried about what people will see. Maybe, I don't know.
I mean, there's an argument to be made for that, a strong one.
I'm watching a bunch of homicide documentaries, and they always bring up the OJ case and how Los Angeles was always so afraid to try anything because the media just failed that whole case or something, or blew it up. So maybe that's why.
Well, that's the narrative they want to spin. It's so funny that that's exactly where your mind went, because I remember as a little girl, when I got home, my mama watched it. My Nana watched it. My nanny, which is my grandmother, watched it. Everyone was so obsessed with it, but they don't want us to know what's happening in courtrooms. We have the Donald Trump trial. Did y'all watch it?
Mm-mm.
Because there's no cameras in federal courts. There's no camera proceeding in 2024 of the former president of the United States being charged. That is radical.
Yeah. But OJ was online, though, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You could watch the whole case. Why was his online and none of the other ones on?
Jurisdictions allow it. So if the media wanted to go and, like Matt Bevin, they went and got prior approval to do video recording.
Who do they have to ask? Him?
The court administrator, typically. Yeah, but they're going to allow it. They're going to allow that because we have a free and open court. I think it would be really telling if you went to court and the court wouldn't let you in. I had that experience last week or 2 weeks ago when I went to court, that they said that we're closing court for this. But if I'd have fought it, they would have let me in. But I think our Constitution requires open courts. You should just go down one day.
I was going to say, do they allow just anybody to go in?
Yeah, you're an American.
I always said if I was retired, that's what I would do. I used to own a bunch of rental property, and I'd have to go to court and evict people because they would destroy my property. And I would sit there waiting on the judge to call me. And it was so comical. Listen to some of these things that would go on in court because it was all eviction court. And these people come up. Well, I told my landlord that I don't know. It was ridiculous, some of the stories they come up with. And it was very entertaining, actually. But yeah, I don't know why it's not streamed. It should be.
Yeah,
if you can go watch it, they should push it online.
Yes, I think there is an active decision not to do that. We had one judge, Julie Kalin, that did that while she was in district court during COVID. She said at the time that she adamantly believed that the public had a right to know what's happening in court. And it's one of those things where if you don't like someone's decision, you'll at least respect the fact that they're transparent and clear, and then you can see why it is that they're doing what they're doing. You
Yeah,
vote them
because
out if you don't like
you know the law. We don't.
Mm-mm.
All we see is criminals being put back out on the street. And we're like, why in the world are we doing this? But if we are allowed to watch the court case, it might make a little more sense. I don't know.
Absolutely.
But I don't. I'm sick of
So how many judges do we have in Louisville?
13, 16, and 10, 39.
And how many of them are decent? 5?
It's difficult for me to comment on that because there are some judges that are supportive of what I'm doing, but given the nature of the fact that they are so protect each other, it would put them in a precarious situation for me to say. But in family court, of the 10 family court judges that were all put on notice of this selfie recording, not a one of them held her accountable. So I would say we have 0 family court judges that in the event I had a family member come to me and say, I'm getting a divorce. I actually did have that scenario happen about a year ago, and I remember like a pit in my stomach, just like, oh my gosh, you guys have young children, and the system is going to bleed you dry.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for divorces to cost $100,000, $200,000 in Louisville.
Oh my gosh, I can't even imagine that.
Which is probably a
I don't
conversation
understand that.
for the other day. Because there's all these third-party appointments. The kids get appointed an attorney. You have custodial evaluators. You've got delays. It's not uncommon for a divorce to go 3-4 years.
Oh my gosh.
So
It's just cheaper to stay married.
Well,
Changing
Oh my
my
gosh.
decision.
I know, right?
You have to put up with Jenny telling me what to do all the time. Still, that's just amazing. You look at the court system and you think, oh, it's straight up honest and they're going to do the right thing. And then when you get attorneys, and I know you're an attorney, but you see sometimes attorneys doing things just to drag it out and make more money. That's a problem too.
absolutely.
But I don't know. I'm just baffled by the whole system.
Yeah, family court is a money-making machine. Now, at least in criminal court, criminal attorneys are not billing for each court appearance. They're doing pretrial, and if it goes to trial, that could be an additional fee. But trials are a lot of work. That makes sense. But the hourly rate is somewhat problematic. But again, like you said, you show up to court, and the judge is just like, I don't have time for this today. And so then you have to come back.
I don't know how that's okay.
It's not okay. And
Well,
it happens on a regular basis.
We're getting ready to go to trial at the end of this month for my sister-in-law was killed in a car wreck. And this has been like the 3rd time that the trial has been pushed
2
back.
years, 3 years.
It'll be 3 years in September.
Yeah.
But we did mediation, which was a joke.
And so you're
like-
meaning a criminal case?
I guess.
Yeah. And so
I literally know hardly nothing about it, but yes.
she's facing jail time. He or she's
Yes.
facing jail time.
Yeah.
And so criminal
Which is
mediations,
also the daughter or the father of their child.
Yeah.
So that's another family
Horrible.
court issue. Yeah. That's a whole nother sector, but
and the power that these judges have in your life, just being, not far removed from that scenario, their decisions shape families, shape a community, the children that suffer from that. And I don't think they take that responsibility with the
like I said, he
seriousness
was one of them.
they should.
He literally just didn't show up. We had all taken off work. Like we were down there. It was the whole thing. Had to get babysitters for the kids.
I know who it is. I'm not going to say on there.
And we're just like, okay. So then they said, all right, well, we'll reschedule for next month. And I'm like, why not tomorrow or next week? Like, why do we have to,
And just the emotional turmoil of going through that, knowing you're going to have to go to court. Like my mom had something stolen from her and I had to go to criminal court with her. And I mean, for me at the time, I was a public defender. It's like you become immune to those kind of thefts and things like that. Like you pick up a new theft charge, you're just like, yes. You know what I mean? That's like easy, low level. But just the stress. And then it happened to me when I got divorced. It changed how I practiced because I was like, I know everything and I'm still terrified because divorce is the person that you're divorcing knows everything about you,
Right.
And that in and of itself is scary. And there's an emotional component that doesn't exist if someone steals your glasses, I mean, it's still emotional, but not the same as a spouse
Sure.
or the dissolution of a marriage. And so these judges just have zero empathy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm learning that. It again, you feel like it's such a high honor to be a judge, and then to kind of hear the back. Of course, I guess it's anything. You think people are holier than thou, and come to find out they're really not. And it's sad. It's just horrible for the system because I think again the general public's tired of what's going on.
Absolutely. And I think the judges will be shocked at how no one has their back because it's gone too far. And I don't know a single person that is complimentary of the judiciary. And the reason I also started talking about this, I couldn't go anywhere in Louisville without someone finding out I was a divorce attorney and then being like, you're not going to believe what happened to me. And I want people to know you're not crazy. The system is.
So how do we get a list? Who can prevent? Who can do this? Who can take the 39 judges and give us a win and loss column? I mean, is there something like that? Where can we go to get that? You said the media is not doing it.
Right. We don't have a political action committee that would really be responsible for fundraising and then going. I mean, certainly they're going to come with a certain angle, but we do need an organization that would look into that. And the judges just need to make that information more accessible.
We need some statistics.
Yeah.
You know,
data.
The presidential race has turned into an ESPN event. How do we turn the judicial thing in that says, all right, so-and-so, you know, have them get up there and throw 39 pictures. And all right, this judge here, maybe we can do it here. I don't know. But this judge here, you know, they let 15 people go that had 12 previous arrests and they let them back out on the streets. We probably don't want to vote for this one. Then we got this judge here. This judge made some really good decisions. You know, it almost needs to be that kind of thing.
It just needs to be reported on. And it's also, we want judges that follow the law. So if those 15 people that were released, that was what the law requires, then you need to be talking about, should we go to our legislature and get the laws changed? But everybody's just blaming everyone else. And we don't know how to fix the problem because everyone is so interested in reducing their own liability. And the cops are saying it's the judge's fault. The judges are saying it's the legislature's fault, and the legislature is just doing nothing.
Yeah. Well, we need to talk about this offline and figure out how to make this happen and have some accountability because, again, people vote for judges based on the last sign they saw coming in the parking lot.
Yes. And
we got to stop that. Oh, no, we got it. There you go.
Yeah.
You got to run again?
No, I will never run. I can't imagine a scenario. You never say never, but I cannot imagine a scenario where I would.
Yeah.
I think this is so much more important. And I do think on my platform, you can follow and I report on some judges. And I would like to grow it and have this be a full-time job.
I was going to say, somebody make sure you follow her. You're just on TikTok or are you on?
TikTok, Kentucky Christine, and everything else. It's Miller Time, Louisville.
There you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Said you went to law school. Where'd you go?
New England School of Law.
I was going to ask you, UK, U of L.
I'm a UK undergrad, so I'm a huge UK fan.
Okay.
There you go. Red over here.
U of L grad.
Well, follow Christine. Give them one more time so people know where to follow you.
TikTok is Kentucky Christine, and it's Miller Time Louisville at Instagram and X.
Well, you've been very entertaining today. I'm hoping
Yeah.
people follow you. It's pretty entertaining to watch you. So
Thank
thanks so
y'all.
much. Thanks for coming in, and we'll talk to you soon.
Yeah. Thank you.